Welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. As always, my name is Adam and got a really fun episode today. Going to have one of my fellow legit agents, real estate agents that I am frequently just in connection with on a weekly basis in different Zoom meetings, but she's not in Colorado like I am. So I get a chance to learn a little bit more about Summer Robbins. So she's my guest today and she's out in Wyoming. And Summer, first of all, just welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure. And, I'm better than I deserve. I cannot complain.
Good, good, good. So tell the audience just a little bit about who you are and just what brought you into real estate.
Sure. Well, first, before I dive into that, I just wanted to say I love the name of your podcast, The Pursuit of Progress. I think that it is such a wonderful reminder to continuously improve, especially in today's day and age where it's so easy to be stagnant. We should always be reminded that continuous improvement is very valuable. And
Thank
I
you.
just really enjoy that.
Thanks.
But my name is Summer Robbins, and let's see, I'm a wife. I've been married for almost 17 years to my wonderful husband. I'm a mom to two teenage daughters, so I appreciate the prayers. And I'm an amateur runner, and I am a full time real estate agent in Casper, Wyoming, helping individuals and families relocate here.
Awesome. Well, just that bio right there, I have three or four things that I'm really excited to talk to you about. But since we are for the most part just connected with other real estate related professionals on the podcast, just tell me a little bit about how you got interested in real estate because you recently moved to Casper from California. So maybe just give us a quick little background on the reasoning for why you decided to leave LA and move to a place like Wyoming, which are about as opposite of two places as I can think of.
Wow. Okay. So that's a loaded question, but I'll try to unpack it as best as I can. Um, I think a lot of people can recognize that California has had its fair share of problems over the last many years. And as a native from California, I think it's easy for us to put band aids on it because we have family, we have great jobs, we enjoy the community there, we enjoy the amenities. I mean, you can be in the mountains and the beach in the same day. So I think that the way that I liken it is it's kind of like there's a wound and you put a band-aid on it, and that band-aid is family, career, amenities, all that. But when COVID happened, I feel like the band-aid was ripped off. And then the wound you saw was infected. And it is very difficult to ignore an infected wound.
Mhm.
And at some point, my husband and I had to have a conversation about whether or not staying in the state of California aligned with our values. And ultimately, we decided that it did not. And so at that point, we decided to start looking at other states to move to. And we shaded in on a map of the US about 12 different states that we were interested in. And then at that point, it was a matter of trying to find a job. And my husband was able to land a great offer here in Casper. I would say within 2 months of him accepting the job, we were here. And when we got to Casper, I decided that I didn't want to continue in the career field that I was in. I was in the utility industry, and I didn't want to keep doing that. I've always had a passion for real estate. I really believe that real estate is a wonderful wealth building tool. And we wanted to buy an investment property, which is exactly what we did when we moved here. Our first property that we bought was actually the property that we converted into a rental property. We lived in it while we renovated it. And 6 months later, we then bought our primary and we put the investment property on Airbnb. And as part of the natural progression of getting involved in real estate, I had a couple of mentors along the way encourage me to get licensed. And a year after getting here, I got licensed as a real estate agent and decided that there's so much information about relocating to Casper from California that I had to share it with other people and help them realize that they can do this too, that it's not as overwhelming as it seems. Yes, you're moving, in my case, I was moving from the most populated state to the least populated state, but there's so much value in moving to small town America. We just wanted to make sure that I was able to get that message out and help other families do the same.
So cool. What an adventure. So your two daughters, what are their ages?
They are 14 and 15.
So that's a pretty, substantial time in their life where I'm sure they had a lot of great friends in California. I'm sure that was mixed, maybe emotions on exciting, or maybe they were pushing back on that. Were they on board with everything, or how did that all go?
They were, because the schools in California during COVID were closed for such an extended period of time. They really felt detached from their friend group,
Mhm.
from the environments that they enjoyed. So by the time we were thinking about moving, they were ready to go.
Okay. And like the 12 states that you had penciled in on the map, had you been to all 12 prior to, because when you said you went out to Casper, had you gone out one time or at least once before just to make sure this was the right spot? Or how did that whole like process, work? Did you narrow from the 12 down to two or three and then have probably some minor arguments or debates with everybody else in the household on, which one of those is going to be the winner?
Well, some of them we had, and some of them we hadn't. Wyoming was one that we hadn't, but we had done enough research where we felt comfortable pursuing moving there if a job offer, came along. And so when my husband got the job offer, we then did a scouting trip. He got the offer on a Thursday, and we were gone on Friday driving to Wyoming from California. And we spent that weekend in Casper exploring the area, exploring the schools, real estate, and on our way home on that following Tuesday, my husband accepted the job offer.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So what time of year was that when you went to Casper?
Well, that's funny because we visited in October, the first week of October, and it was absolutely gorgeous.
Okay.
It was 60s and 70s. The fall leaves were on full display. The wind was super calm, and we moved in December 5th. And so it was a totally different climate at that point. It was snowing when we moved. It was much colder. It was a shock.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine. I think Casper is one of those places. I didn't mention this when we started the podcast, but I have a little bit of a connection there with my dad. My dad grew up in Casper, and then he went to the University of Wyoming. So I have a lot of family connections in Wyoming, and just some of the stories he would tell me about it being windy and just how cold the winters can be. And I think some of these stereotypes that I'm sure aren't nearly as bad as what some of the what you hear sometimes, but just thinking about again from a sunny California in December, wow, that had to have been quite the shock. But again, what a cool adventure.
It really was. And I think it just goes to show that when you start living your values, you're going to do what you need to do regardless. And we just knew that California was no longer a sustainable option for our family. And we saw what Casper could be. And it has been a huge blessing. I mean, the friendships and relationships that my daughters have, that I have with people locally here have been amazing and so much deeper and richer than what I ever had in California. And I lived in California my whole life until I moved here. As much as people definitely want to poke fun at Casper because we do get a lot of wind and the weather is very harsh in the wintertime, I would just encourage people that if you are able to stick it out your first winter, you're going to find so much value in the remainder of the year that I don't think you're going to be immediately wanting to revert back to where you came from. You just
Okay.
have to really stick with it and dig in and get those relationships established, and
Mhm.
that's really the key.
So I know you are, very athletic. You're a big runner. Is the rest of your family also pretty outdoorsy? Was Wyoming also a high on your potential move list just because of the outdoor opportunities and all? I look at Wyoming as from a Colorado native standpoint. Colorado is kind of becoming California, where it's becoming so overpopulated and busy, and some of the things that I'm sure that were maybe frustrating you about California, I'm also feeling similarly in
Mm.
Colorado at this point, and I see Wyoming as just one of these kind of hidden gems where there's just so many incredible outdoor opportunities with, all kind of hiking, everything. I mean, there's just a ton in Wyoming that nobody really knows about or, makes the time to appreciate like other places around the country.
That is so true. And yes, the outdoor recreation opportunities was one of the reasons why that was higher on our list in terms of desirability. My husband is a hunter, he's a
Okay.
fisher, he loves to hike. I love to hike too. I'm also a runner. I do find running is a little bit more challenging here in Wyoming just because of the weather.
Hmm.
On super windy days, it's not fun to be out running.
Yeah.
And then if it's been snowing, then you run the risk of slipping and falling. I do a lot of indoor workouts with regards to that when the weather is not favorable. But during the summertime and fall, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yeah, the outdoor recreation is one of the top reasons why we decided to move here. We finally went to Yellowstone last summer and got to experience that. It was amazing. We've been to Grand Teton twice, and that was, I mean, both times have just been, you're just in awe looking at these huge mountains. Like, oh my gosh, what
So
have I been?
for people that maybe don't know exactly where Casper is in Wyoming, what would be the driving distance to Yellowstone and also to Grand Teton? I guess it's kind of similar, right?
Yeah, I mean, Grand Teton is very close to Yellowstone, so it's about a 4-hour drive from Casper.
So you could do that on
Yeah, because
a weekend.
Casper is centrally located, so yeah,
And what would the driving distance be to come visit me in Denver? What would that be?
about 4 hours.
About 4? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, not bad. I think that's something that's cool.
No.
Is it's a lot closer than I realized. Yet I don't really make the effort to get up there. So
I've heard that a lot from folks in Colorado. So I'm not surprised, but that's okay. Casper is starting to get a little more publicity. We just had our what they call it, CNFR, so College Nationals Finals Rodeo. It's held in Casper every single year in June. It's a huge tourism draw, and we're just going to be adding more and more events. As the years continue on, Casper is really trying to grow and expand. And so hopefully you'll be hearing more about us in the future.
awesome. Okay. Well, yeah. Today,
Yeah.
as we're filming this, it's June 17th. So I'm sure that July is big in Casper, just being kind of that Western town vibe. Is there some pretty cool stuff going on over that week?
You know, we have a huge fireworks show at the event center that we love to attend every year. But the bigger event is our Central Wyoming Fair and Rodeo, which happens, I think, the week after 4th of July. We have a day called Parade Day that ushers in the start of the rodeo, and almost the entire city of Casper shuts down during that morning to allow everybody to attend and participate in the parade. And it's just awesome. I mean, you've got kids and families and all these different floats, and they're throwing out
Hmm.
candy or squirting you with water guns, and it brings out the whole community, and you just feel like, man, this is summer.
I need to. I'll ask my dad, and I'll share this with you later on. But my dad has three siblings, and one of his sisters was the prom queen. This back in probably 1965. But I remember seeing all these pictures of that parade you're talking about, and her being there's like all these different floats and different things going on, and I've got a couple stories about that parade I think that you're talking about. That definitely that small town, just cool, and just um, I don't know, we just don't have that many events like that anymore. It's cool.
That's right. And so that's one of the highlights of our summer season here. Yeah, and it really just feels like it's reminiscent of simpler times
Hmm.
for sure.
So I'd love to just talk a little bit about real estate. I know a lot of our audience is not necessarily a realtor or even in that space, but I think a lot of the aspects of real estate in that business is applicable to a lot of other people's careers. Um, I want to talk about just how your focus with your business and your branding and your lead generation, how you're acquiring new clients. A lot of that is relocation clients that are people similar to yourself that are moving to Casper. Maybe just tell me a little bit about just how that came to be about. I know you had mentioned how you're the lady that you had bought your home from. You've got a really close relationship with her, and she became kind of a mentor. But just how that is your kind of your bread and butter when it comes to your business.
Well, like I said, or like I mentioned to you earlier, the agent that helped us relocate here was an amazing agent, and she was very relational and she cared. And I had never had that experience with a real estate agent before. We'd bought several properties living in California, and I'd never had an experience like what I had with the agent that, served us in getting here. And so when she encouraged me to get into real estate, she was the prime example of what I wanted to be. And so that is the approach that I've taken with my clients. I am the relational agent. When we close the deal and you get the keys to your home, our relationship does not stop there. I'm going to continue to follow up with you, make sure that you're doing okay, getting settled into Casper. I'm going to make sure that you know that if you need recommendations on anything, a hairstylist, a vet, I've lived here long enough to know who I would recommend. And so I just want to make sure that my clients feel totally supported and they feel good about this move.
Are there a lot of people relocating to Casper similar to you? Is a lot of the reasoning for people moving there the same reason you moved there, just trying to find a more simpler. That seems like such um, an important thing to a lot of people now that maybe wasn't that you know high up on the list 10 years ago, but now maybe especially after COVID, just people really looking for that type of lifestyle.
Yeah, I would say probably 60% of the clients that I serve are coming from the West Coast. So not all from California, but all along, the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, and all that. I've actually had one family come here from out of the country. That was really exciting. And they were coming here for similar reasons, just where they were at. It was no longer a good fit for their family, and they wanted to get there. They're Americans, but they had moved out of the country for a time and they wanted to get back to the States for their kids. So yeah, it's been amazing being able to see how my reach finds people and how you just attract them like a magnet once your message is clear and concise. Oftentimes, it's not me selling folks on Casper. They're already coming here. They have a job offer in hand. It's really just them seeking who are they going to have to help them get here. And so it's really neat because oftentimes they're already like, yep, we've done our research. We know exactly what we're getting into. This is where we're working at. We just need a house. And it's like, okay. But I also let them know that it is so much more than just me helping them find a house, too, because once they get here and they're living here, they might have a lot more questions.
Yeah, maybe. So, we're connected through Legit Agents, which is this group that is very heavily focused on the value of video and the understanding of how using things like YouTube can really expand your reach and just reach these people, target these people that are, looking up on YouTube, places to move in Wyoming or, living in Casper. What are the pros and cons of living in Casper, Wyoming? Those types of search criteria. So a lot of your clientele that you're finding online, or, people that are finding you, I should say, is that pretty much all through YouTube?
Yeah, about 80% of my clients are finding me through YouTube, and then the other 20% are finding me through Facebook groups of relocating to Wyoming. And so I start engaging with them when I see their posts. And then usually we take the conversation to email or to text and phone calls, and we see if we can be a good fit for one another in trying to get here.
So with YouTube, I know some of my audience has maybe listened to past episodes where we've touched on YouTube on a few other topics in the past. But when you got out to Casper and you just got your boots on the ground, decided you wanted to become a realtor, at that point, did you realize? Did you find legit agents and understand some of this YouTube strategy, or when did? At what point after you moved to Wyoming did you kind of see YouTube as this maybe untapped resource for marketing?
So I didn't want to do YouTube at first, to be honest with you. But it was actually my sponsors at EXP who had had so much success. They're down in Lower Alabama. They'd had so much success with their YouTube channel, and they really encouraged me when I was onboarding with EXP to consider starting a YouTube channel, considering there's only a handful of agents out here even doing it. So I kind of, procrastinated on that for probably about the first 4 months after being licensed. I really just wanted to work on my sphere of the folks that I did know here, families at my daughter's school, families at our church. But the more I got to thinking about it, it just made sense to start YouTube. And then at that point, when I started asking more questions about YouTube, then my sponsors got me connected with our Legit Agents group, and the rest is history. Started doing my channel in August of last year, and I had my first deal closed from YouTube by
That
January.
is awesome. That's motivating for me to hear because I haven't had that same kind of steep trajectory of ROI on my YouTube channel. Maybe I'm in a little bit more saturated market, and maybe I need to improve some of my messaging on my end. But that's just awesome to hear how quickly you're able to convert people. Um, in a place like Casper and it being a small town, did you have any resistance or pushback from locals that have been in Casper their entire life? They're, the real estate agent in Casper for 35 years, and this is how they've done it. This is how they're always going to do it. And who's this outsider from California coming into our market and being all over the internet? Like, have you had some, hiccups, or not hiccups, I should say, speed bumps or just challenges with that dynamic?
So it's an interesting question because I definitely know that the agents in town know that I do YouTube. I mean, like I said, there's only a handful of agents doing it. So when you are researching Casper on YouTube, there's a high likelihood my videos are going to pop
Hmm.
up. So I would say that most of the agents I interact with, especially on the listing side, when I'm representing the buyers, they will ask me questions like, "Oh, so how long have you been in Casper? How long have you been an agent?" But they never talk about YouTube, which I think is very interesting, even though I would imagine most of them know that that is my primary lead generation source. And in terms of how I've been received, I've actually had a lot of compliments from agents. They're like, your offers are really clean. You've been very pleasant to work with. I really hope I get to do another deal with you in the future. So that's always encouraging. So thankfully, I don't feel like I've had a ton of pushback from local agents out here. So I guess I wouldn't really know what their perception of me is, but I would imagine there's probably mixed feelings, because like you said, there are a lot of agents that have been doing it for a long time and it's just business as usual, even though the market is kind of changing in terms of how we market ourselves. And some agents just aren't really open to changing how they do business.
Well, I would add to that too. I think one of your biggest strengths is just you have one of the most personable, friendly, like it comes across, even though we haven't even, been able to talk in person, just the energy that you have comes across very naturally to other people. And I think that regardless of wherever you are, I think that is probably working for your favor. I mean, just your smile, everything. I think that just, I'm sure, is a big deterrent from maybe what it could be for other people if they didn't have that same kind of, friendly type tone with their how they speak and how they present themselves. So,
Well, I definitely believe in trying to just lather people with honey. Like you're going to attract more bees with honey than you will with vinegar. If that helps get the transaction done and it's smooth and everybody is collaborative, then it's a win. So, not that it's disingenuous, it's just genuinely how I feel about conducting business in general, is just trying to be as sweet and kind and collaborative as possible.
yeah, that was another question that I had for you is kind of on that same topic is just like, is that just something that has always come naturally to you as far as just being an incredibly positive, like upbeat person? Or are there certain maybe um, tips that you could provide people, myself included, that doesn't come completely naturally to just how to kind of have that mindset, have that come across to other people that you're talking to?
Well, if my husband were in the room, he would tell you that I definitely have my moments behind closed doors, of course, but it just yeah, it is my I am a optimist at
Hmm.
heart and I genuinely believe in the good of people and I'm always hopeful for the good in life. And so I think that if we just shift our mindset from what's going to go wrong to what's going to go right, it just takes you so much further. And it's not easy for me. I don't always feel that way, but I try to even project that to people when I'm not feeling my best because I know that if I start showing cracks in my confidence and just ability to perform that they're going to pick up on that energy. So and sometimes I don't believe in the term fake it till you make it, but I do believe that sometimes just pushing through even when you're not feeling the best honestly will help get you to that better place at some point versus just letting that negativity just kind of sink in and just totally tank your day.
So I know you're really big on consistency and also like just being connected on social media. I always see your morning routine posts on your Instagram stories. Do you attribute a lot of that to also having such an optimistic and kind of positive outlook on life as far as kind of setting the intention and setting the intent for the day with small wins, getting your body moving first thing in the morning, waking up early, is that would you say that's also a part of this?
So I would say that my morning routine actually came into play when I was working in the corporate world in
Okay.
California. So I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 6 years after we had our kids, and then once they were of school age, then I went back to work. And I was in the corporate world and working for the utility industry up until we moved to Wyoming. And originally, I was commuting an hour and a half
Oof.
each way when I first started in that industry. So my mornings would naturally start at 4:30, and so almost feels like a luxury that I get to wake up at 5 or 5:30 if I want. So doing that for as long as I did, it just is like ingrained in me that I have to wake up early so that way I can tackle the day. So that's kind of where that morning routine started, and I've just kind of carried it through,
Mhm.
even in real estate.
I feel like running is one of those activities too that just like I'm really big with going to the gym every morning, but it's lifting weights doesn't give you that same kind of maybe endorphin rush or that other side of physical activity that I think running and those types of cardio based activities do. So I could see that just you being a very, dedicated runner, that I'm sure that helps too.
Yeah, and it's cheaper than
Yeah.
therapy, and, it allows me to have I have some of the best conversations with myself while just running, like, going through my day. What do I have on my plate? How do I plan to achieve, or get through XYZ? And running just allows me to have that time for myself. I do typically run with music, which people kind of find strange, like, "Well, how do you have those long thought processes with music?" For whatever reason, it helps me to be able to make sense of my day. So, anyways, yeah, I agree. It's been incredibly helpful for me, especially getting into a new industry here in real estate, and just being able to make sure that I'm able to get the job done for my clients and stay focused and not get too distracted
Hmm.
with all the things that are trying to vie for our attention nowadays.
I can't imagine not running with music. I remember hearing David Goggins talk about that recently, about how he never has any music or anything, even on these like 200-mile ultra marathon type races, and just thinking, man, like what does your mind, like what depths in your mind do you go when you have nothing distracting you other than just your own thoughts? Like there's got to be a happy medium.
Yeah, that sounds a little
Yeah,
scary.
yeah. So how did just on a different topic on running, how did you get into running? Has
Yeah.
that been something you've always been passionate about?
Well, I got into running after I had my second
Yeah.
baby. So it was a way for me to have me time and also to try to lose the weight. And it also kind of presented a good challenge because being a stay at home mom, you tend to forget your value. So getting into running and then starting to run races, like I ran the LA Marathon in 2015. And that was a huge challenge for me, just staying consistent on a training schedule, and I just kind of kept with it, to be honest with you, even once I went back into the workforce. And I've just realized the benefits of being able to continually challenge yourself. I don't run full marathons anymore, though. I only run halves. That was a one and done kind of a thing for me. But I still even enjoy I still just even enjoy being able to train for a half marathon and just trying to continuously improve. The pursuit.
Well, I've that's been something I've kind of put on my goal list for this year, is to get back into more of the running, or just some sort of like maybe even bike ride, something that's maybe just more cardio
Yeah,
based. Not that I have or ever will be pregnant, but just I'm a bigger guy at the moment, just from focusing more on weightlifting.
yeah,
I've always had this limiting belief of like, like if I try running right now, I go half a mile and I'm just gassed, I'm exhausted. And I imagine it's kind of like, coming off of being pregnant, your body is in a place where you got to do some work to kind of, get going
yep.
again. What kind of timeline, or did you have like a pretty strict, have like a program you did to kind of get into it? Or how did that work when you first started up again after your kid, after your daughter?
Yeah. So I forget what the program is called, but initially it was a running program that you use while you're training for a half marathon because I started running half marathons. Then I ran a full, and then I realized I hated that. And then I went back to running half marathons. But when I first started training for my first half marathon, there's a program where you run 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, and you do that for all of your training runs. So you're not really running consistently your first go at a half marathon. But then what I found was once you accomplish that, then you realize you can go a lot farther than just 2 minutes running, because you're like, okay, well, I ran 13.1 miles, even if it was half running, half walking. You're not walking at a slow pace by any stretch of the imagination. And then it just continues to motivate you. And you're like, okay, well, if I can go 5 minutes, can I go seven? Can I do a full mile running? And then before you know it, you're running 5 miles straight through, and you're like, wow, this is incredible. I feel so good. And then you're like, okay, well, now I want to do a half marathon running the whole way. So that's kind of just how it progressed for me. Um, yeah, it was definitely not an overnight situation. It took time, but I just found that I really enjoyed the journey, which was the most important
Yeah, there's
part.
got to be huge value in just thinking you can't do it, following the
Yep.
process, realizing, a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, looking back and being like, wow, look at all this progress I've already made. Always more to be done. But I think that just that
Yep.
momentum that you could establish through accomplishing a goal like that and then applying that to other areas of your life, just that's in my mind why I want to tackle a goal like that, is just to get some of that momentum and apply it to other areas of my life. But I
Totally do it,
Sure.
Adam. Don't let those limiting beliefs tell you that you
Okay,
can't.
my accountability partner on that one, I might need to ask you. On the
Happy to do
one
it.
last thing on the running before we move on, I just wanted to I'm trying to
Sure.
find it here in my notes. I love how you have a very unique brand image, or just your branding is connected to running. It's kind of this very
Yep.
unique way to differentiate yourself among the very kind of cookie cutter, like, and I'm one of those, Adam sells Denver. It's kind of a very generic type brand. And I just love how yours is much more unique. And I think one of the things that I like the most, I'm trying to find it here in my notes, was your kind of your tagline, running your real estate needs one step at a time. I think that is super clever and just very to the point. It makes sense, and it's connected
Yeah.
to kind of your identity and who you are. How did you come up with that?
Well, I mean, I love running and I love staying busy and I love serving my clients. And so I want them to know that this big move does not have to be overwhelming, but that I'm going to work for them as much as I need to make sure that we get to the finish line and that they feel good at the end of the day. So I figured what better way to do that than to combine running with real estate. Yep. You'll see that I call myself the real estate runner online. And yeah, it's just kind of
I love it.
worked.
It's very clever, and again, it's something that sets you apart from everybody else that doesn't have that same level of creativity. So good work on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's just kind of last topic we can chat about is just this work life balance. So I'm always curious on
Mm,
just so myself, I've got a girlfriend and I've got a dog, but I don't have any kids. I'm always amazed at how I think of my workload and just what I'm trying to accomplish. And then I see, some of my peers like yourself who is accomplishing just as much, if not more. And you have a husband, two kids, you got all this other stuff that you're juggling. As far as like work life balance, are you pretty, would you say would you grade yourself pretty good with that as far as, having your work life, having, dedicated time in the evenings or whenever it is that you kind of set aside for your husband, for your kids? How do you handle just that work life balance?
Well, I would say that we definitely strive to have a good balance, but it's not always that way. It does get messy at times, but it helps that my husband is extremely supportive. So if he can step in and help fill in the gaps for me because I'm busy working, he's happy to do so. Now, that's not always the case because he travels a lot for work too. But I think what's really important is when we are feeling the weight of things being chaotic and out of order, our family is really good about communicating like, "Hey mom, I feel like you just haven't really been present lately." And it's like, "Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to refocus." Or even just my husband and I, if we feel like we've just kind of been detached lately, it's like, "Okay, we should probably plan a date night just to have a quiet meal together because we need to refocus again." Well, I would say that we definitely strive to keep that work life balance good and just healthy for the family. It isn't always the case, but it does oftentimes involve me working later evenings or starting very early in the morning. So that way I can have that time in the middle of the day to be present for my kids. And then, the new thing that I'm really trying to do is putting the phone away during the dinner hour. It's really
Hmm.
hard because I really care about my clients. And I've kind of set this expectation of if I see the text, I try to respond as quickly as possible. And something that Will has said in our legit agents group, which I love and I'm trying to really embody, is nobody's dying in real estate. It's going to
Yep.
be okay. So you can take the 30 minutes and finish your dinner and have that time and then respond to the text. So I'm really trying to focus on that right now because that's been really hard for me
Well, yeah,
lately.
when we have in real estate, our we have no idea, when we are or aren't going to be busy, but also it typically are,
Right.
doing things on the weekends, evenings. There's times that are pretty non-traditional to what most other people's work, asks for them, as far as clock in at 8 or 9, you're kind of done by 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You, though, are really just relying on just this really good communication you have with your daughters and your husband. It's not like
Yeah.
once a month your husband and you are, having a date night, or your kids, you've got, 1 hour a week per daughter that you're doing something one on one. I mean, you guys are at a place where you guys have already this good open line of communication, and you just kind of go with the ebbs and flows of life. And if things are off kilter a little bit, you guys are good with just talking to each other about that.
Yep. And making sure that we take action, not just saying, okay, I'll get better. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And I think that's the most important thing is making sure that my kids see that when they're vocalizing that they're feeling like I'm not spending enough time with them, there's a lack of attention there. That then I'm intentional in making sure that not only am I going to tell them what I'm going to do, but I'm actually going to show
Hmm.
up and do it.
And your daughters are at that age where you don't have too many more years left with them in the household, right? I mean, that's
That's right. That's right. I know. I can't believe it. I have a my 15-year-old is driving right now on her permit. So, like I said, lots of prayers, please, because it's getting real over here.
I remember dad telling me in Wyoming when he was growing up that the license to get a license back in the day was 15 in Wyoming. So he, I think,
Yep.
started driving at like 14 and a half or something crazy. So that's gonna be a huge.
You can still do, by
Really?
the way, if you have extenuating, yeah, if you have extenuating circumstances, like if you live too far away from your school, because some kids even start working
Hmm.
at 15. So if they have a job, they can petition to get their license at 15. So kind of crazy.
So, Wyoming is very different from California. Your daughters are enjoying life there. Do you
Yes.
see them wanting to, when they are out of the household, also stay? It sounds like you guys have a really close family. Are they planning on kind of sticking around? I mean, maybe you don't know yet, but are they college aspirations, or are they? What do you think? Fast forward 5 years, what's life going to look like?
So my older daughter wants to become an
Okay.
attorney. So I don't know if she'll want to stay in Wyoming. My younger daughter really loves Wyoming. She wants to be a nurse. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up being kind of maybe a split household where maybe my younger daughter
Hmm.
stays, my older daughter goes away to school. I don't really know, but I would anticipate at the very least probably one of them will not be staying here just because of their career aspirations and we'll just kind of tackle it when we get there.
Have they been motivated and kind of inspired by seeing over the last few years your ability to, buy this initial property when you guys first moved out there, turn that into a rental, understanding the value of having passive income and this investment property that, is a long game. It's a long play. It's not something to get rich overnight with, but have they been inspired just watching you kind of take on this new career and watching you guys with this rental property? I know we've talked offline about just how hands on you guys are with fixing up the place. And I'm sure that's probably your rental property and
Yep.
your new primary home that you guys also own. Just doing all of the, the
Yeah.
sweat equity, adding value through work,
Yep.
doing work yourselves. Have they been a part of that at all? Have you kind of ingrained that into them through watching you guys do that?
Yeah, well, when we were fixing up our townhouse that we turned into our rental property, they were involved in painting. They were involved in helping us swap out countertops, all the things that we had to do. So they were very involved. And then once we converted it into, because initially we converted our rental property into an Airbnb. So that first summer that we were, renting it out in Airbnb, there were a lot of times where they had to help me with the turnover. And so, yeah, they were the ones collecting the laundry and they were the ones helping me make beds and they were very involved. And now they're definitely dad's helper in terms of household projects here at
Hmm.
our house. Even just this weekend, we were installing recessed lighting into our master bath and they were the ones helping dad in the attic space to run the wire. And so they're very involved. My husband has really tried to make sure that he at least instills some level of handiness in both the girls. And I think he's doing an all right
When I
job.
think of what the lessons I've learned from my parents and my dad, I think that's probably what I'm most appreciative and thankful for is that exact thing. Just like seeing them do similar things as a child growing up and even into my 20s and 30s, just seeing, the grind that it takes, on a
Yep.
weekend when some of your other family or friends or whoever is, out going skiing or going on a road trip for the weekend and just or going and drinking all weekend at the bars, whatever it is, seeing that's those little
Yep.
small sacrifices over a long period of time have a huge return on your investment over the big picture. And I'm very thankful for my parents just to teach me that. And I don't think that is something that's that common that other, you know, people get to also get from their
Yeah.
parents.
No, I totally agree. In today's day and age, I mean, you see kids on their phones all the time, and they're not very helpful with their parents oftentimes. And so that was something that we really wanted to make sure that we changed for our girls, just to make sure that they're different, but in a good way. So that way they can actually be really good citizens in society once they get out on their own and be a help, not a hurt.
The whole vacation rental, short term vacation rental industry. I know in Denver that was such a huge boom, maybe 8, 10 years ago. And then all these restrictions and different counties now have moratoriums on them where you can't even do them. Or if you are, you're only limited to own one per county. There's all these different hoops you have to jump through in Denver. Is Wyoming still pretty
Yeah.
open, and is that a big barrier for a lot of people that are interested in investment properties and short-term rentals specifically? Is it buyer friendly on that in Wyoming?
So it still is right now, but the city has become aware that more and more people have properties on Airbnb. And so when you listen to city council meetings, especially towards the tail end of last year, it was a topic that came up in terms of should we start regulating this more? You know, we are a no state income tax state. So there just isn't a ton of taxes coming in general. So, of course, the city's got to try to make that up somewhere. So, right now, it's still not regulated, but in the future it may, which was why we actually pivoted into the midterm rental space because a midterm rental doesn't fit the term for a short term because you're renting it out for more than 7 days. And typically we rent it out in 30-day increments at minimum. And so it reduces the amount of turnover for us. And it also helps us actually get a better ROI than doing it as a long term rental because it is a fully furnished rental with all utilities paid. So there's a convenience factor there too for folks who are especially coming here on contract. You know, we're a secondary market here in
Hmm.
Casper. So we get a lot of folks that are here on a contract for 6 months to a year. They don't really want to uproot their entire lives just for that. So this is a good way to meet that need where it's like just bring your suitcase, you'll have a place that's taken care of for you for as long as you're here and then when you're ready to go home, you can go home and not worry about it.
So in Denver, the midterm rental I think is a 30-day minimum. So in Casper in Wyoming, it's only 7 days. You can get around that loophole.
I don't think there's a So I don't think they've made a clear, defined term of what short term versus
Okay.
midterm yet, because they haven't started regulating it. But when I've done my reading, especially in high touristy destinations like the Gulf Coast and in LA, they typically find a short term rental as anything less than
Okay.
7 days, a period of less.
Okay. So I
So
know
yeah.
that's a big thing in Denver again because all these restrictions. They're saying midterm
Yeah.
rental investment opportunities, and I think nursing. I don't know. Is there a lot of oil? I know obviously there's a lot
Yep.
of oil and gas in Wyoming. Is there a lot
Yep.
close enough to Casper where you're at where that's part of the midterm rental demographic? Is people that are coming out to the oil and gas industry?
Yeah, we have a refinery out here that, draws in a lot of folks, but a lot of the people that we have rented to are here for construction or for healthcare or even for education. Like some folks will be, coming in to do an IT job for the school district for 6 months. And so they need a place to stay. So there's actually a lot more than just the energy industry that Casper caters to in terms of those
Okay.
contract workers.
So with Casper, what's the population in Casper? Is it off top hand?
It's around, yeah, it's around 58,000.
So back to this YouTube channel and just the content that you're putting out onto your channel, do you become in a position where you have to kind of repeat yourself, or do you have a little bit more unique, maybe strategy since it is a smaller, city compared with Denver or Tampa, Florida, or these where you just have all kinds of different neighborhoods to feature and all these different areas to teach people about if they're considering moving there. With Casper, do you have to get a little bit more creative on like your topics and what you're diving into? And is some of that even like maybe this vacation rental industry or, just other topics like that?
Yeah, I definitely have to get creative. And I would be lying if I didn't tell you that it was a struggle for me at times because it's like, what am I going to talk about? What's the next video going to be about? And sometimes I do touch on topics that I've already spoken to in previous videos, but it's been, 8 months. So it's kind of like, well, if you get a new viewer, they may not have seen all of your other previous videos. So it can still be a benefit to them. Right now, I am trying to focus on different subdivisions that I think may be desirable for a certain sect of clientele. It seems like subdivisions where you have acreage, but you're not too far away from the city. There are some that are still on city water, but you have like 2 or 3 acres. So you kind of have that balance of you're not on well water, you're not on a septic system, but you still feel more rural, even though the Walmart's only 10 minutes down the road. So I'm trying to focus on highlighting on my channel next some of those subdivisions because that seems to be where people are kind of wanting right now. The other thing that I've noticed is that people want to build, and raw land is crazy out here. It's like the wild, wild west. So that's something that I'm trying to educate folks on as well, because you have people that have lived in the city their whole lives and now they want the polar opposite, which is great. But building is not for the faint of heart. So I'm trying to make sure that I educate folks about that too, because there's a lot of things you have to be aware of when you're building from scratch on raw land.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially in Wyoming with mineral rights and water rights, a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
I kind of that was a little bit of a
Yep.
loaded question just because I was, just thinking of other
Right.
listeners and viewers on our podcast that are also maybe, getting motivated to start their own YouTube channels. And if they're also in similar smaller markets like yourselves, I think that you'd be a really good resource for them just to start following on social or on online on YouTube, just to kind of see how you have a unique take on presenting that message to your audience.
Yeah. I mean, I try to. And, I really just try to be as transparent as possible. I didn't build when we moved out here. So there are still some things that I'm learning myself about building on raw land. But I know enough to know that you really have to have the capital and the patience. And I feel like most people have one or the other. They either have the money and no time, or they have the time, but they don't have the money. And so trying to articulate that in a way that's not coming off as offensive or me saying that you don't have what it takes to do it. That's been what I'm trying to work on now, is just trying to make sure that I'm educating in a loving and helpful manner. Because I would hate for somebody to buy land and get into building and then realize, my gosh, this is not, I bit off
Yeah,
more than I can
yes.
chew.
Very
Yeah.
big selling point for viewers that are maybe relocating, and you've been in their shoes very recently, and just having somebody that they can relate to
Yeah.
and kind of learn from your mistakes and just get that confidence from seeing somebody that's done it, just a couple years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, I think, a really good value too, though, just to be able to, have you be their guide. Yeah.
That's the goal.
Well, that's great. I think we got some really good, just different topics we covered. I think there's a lot more we could dive deeper into maybe on another episode this summer. So hopefully we can have you back this summer,
Sure.
Summer.
I would love it. Let's do
Before
it.
we wrap up, I'd love just to have our audience be able to connect with you if they would like. Just give us again your Instagram handle and also how they can find you on YouTube.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at real estate runner YO. That's probably the best way to get to know me, because you can follow my stories, kind of get a better idea of my day in and day out personality. Obviously, you can check out my reels too. And then you can find me on YouTube at Living in
And
Casper.
I will put all that info also in the show notes. So if you guys don't remember that and you need to look her up, just look at the show notes after the episode and we'll have it there for you as well. Summer, before we wrap up, do you have anything else you'd like just to share with the audience before we finish?
No, I just want to say thank you so much, Adam, for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity to share about Wyoming and get to know you a little bit better too. And I hope that the audience got some value out of what it could be like moving to
Again,
Wyoming.
guys, 4th of July, only a couple weeks away. Wyoming is the best state to get the fireworks.
That's right. We go
Is there
big.
already? I guess you're not really on the border. How close are you to the border?
We are
Yeah.
about 2.5 hours away from like
Yeah.
the Colorado
What's
Wyoming
the I'm
border.
trying to
Yeah.
remember the name. What's the border town? Yeah, Cheyenne. So Cheyenne
Cheyenne.
is where you find all the fireworks stands probably lining up on either side of the road.
Yep. Yep. Make a trip
Yeah,
out. You'll get all the good
definitely.
stuff.
Cool, you guys. Well, thank you so much for listening or viewing the show today. I think we got a lot of really good little insights from somebody that's been very successful in multiple areas of her life: family, real estate, just taking her entire life and moving it halfway across the country and doing it with ease and enjoying it. And just really very an optimistic type person. So definitely follow Summer if you guys want to get more just real estate or just life tips and advice. And with that, don't forget, you guys, share the show. If you have any other people that would like to learn a little bit more about their, improvement, their pursuit of progress, how to get 1% better every single day, I would love it if you guys could just share the show with somebody and help just expand our audience as best we can. But with that, I will close us out. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to sharing an all new episode next Friday on the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Thanks again. Bye.